It started with a simple spilled drink, but it ended with the most shocking revelation in aviation history. On Flight 402 to London, a wealthy socialite thought her platinum status gave her the right to use a young woman as a punching bag. She screamed, she struck, and she drew blood, convinced the world was on her side. But she didn't know who she was hitting. She didn't know that the quiet girl in seat 34B held a secret so powerful it would freeze the entire cabin in terror. When the truth came out, there was nowhere to run at 30,000 feet. Watch until the end. Karma has never hit this hard. The air inside the first-class cabin of Skyline Airways Flight 402 smelled of expensive leather, heated lavender towels, and the distinct crisp scent of money. For Patricia Sterling, this was the only way to travel. Patricia adjusted the collar of her Chanel blazer, checking her reflection in the darkened window. At 52, she wore her wealth like armor. She was the wife of a real estate tycoon, a board member of 3 charities, and most importantly to her, a Diamond Elite member of Skyline Airways. That little plastic card in her purse was her scepter, and this plane was her kingdom. "Excuse me," she snapped, not bothering to look up as a flight attendant passed. "My champagne is warm. Take it back." The flight attendant, a young man named Liam, with patience etched into his tired smile, nodded. "Apologies, Mrs. Sterling. I'll get a fresh glass immediately." "See that you do," Patricia muttered, returning her gaze to her iPad. "Service has gone downhill lately. They let just anyone work here." The plane was still boarding at JFK, the chaotic shuffle of humanity filing past the curtain separating the haves from the have-nots. Patricia loathed this part. She hated having the economy passengers walk through first class to get to the back. She felt their eyes on her envy, judgment, curiosity. She usually made a point of wearing her noise-cancelling headphones to block out their existence, but today she had forgotten to charge them. "Move it along, please," Patricia said loudly, though she wasn't speaking to anyone in particular. She just wanted the line to move faster so the curtain could be drawn. Standing in the aisle, blocked by a family struggling with a stroller, was a young black woman. She looked to be in her early 20s, dressed in a simple oversized grey hoodie and worn-out jeans. She had a backpack slung over one shoulder and was clutching a thick medical textbook to her chest. Her name was Maya, though Patricia didn't know that, nor would she have cared. Maya looked exhausted. Her eyes were rimmed with red, likely from lack of sleep, and she was trying to make herself as small as possible to avoid brushing against the expensive seats. "Can you believe the attire?" Patricia whispered loudly to the man sitting across the aisle. A businessman named Arthur, who was too busy typing on his laptop to respond. "It's like they let people roll out of bed and onto the plane. Standards, people, standards." Maya heard her. She tightened her grip on her book, keeping her head down. She wasn't looking for trouble. She just wanted to get to her seat in row 34, put her headphones on, and study. This flight was crucial for her, a bridge between her past and a future she had fought tooth and nail to secure. The line lurched forward. Maya took a step, but the passenger in front of her stopped abruptly to shove a bag into the overhead bin. Maya stumbled her sneaker, catching the edge of the plush carpet. To steady herself, she instinctively reached out. Her hand lightly brushed the sleeve of Patricia's blazer. It was a feather-light touch, barely a graze. But to Patricia Sterling it was an assault. Patricia recoiled, as if she had been burned. She gasped, dropping her iPad onto her lap. "Don't touch me!" she shrieked, her voice cutting through the ambient noise of the cabin like a siren. The cabin went silent. The boarding music, a soft jazz loop, seemed to fade into the background. Maya froze her eyes wide. I'm so sorry, ma'am. I tripped. I didn't mean to. You didn't mean to, Patricia interrupted, standing up. She towered over Maya, her face twisting into a mask of disgust. She brushed her sleeve frantically as if Maya's hand had left a stain. Look what you did. This is cashmere. You can't just put your dirty hands on people. It was an accident, Maya said, her voice soft but steady. I really am sorry. I didn't dirty your coat. Don't you talk back to me, Patricia hissed, stepping into the aisle, effectively blocking the flow of passengers. You people are all the same. No respect for personal space. No respect for anything. Liam, the flight attendant, hurried over, sensing the tension spiking. Is there a problem here, ladies? Yes, there is a problem. Patricia pointed a manicured finger at Maya's face. This girl assaulted me. She grabbed me. I want her off this flight. Liam looked at Maya, who was shaking her head, bewildered. I just tripped, Maya explained to Liam. I barely touched her sleeve. Liam turned to Patricia with a practiced de-escalating smile. Mrs. Sterling, I'm sure it was just an accident. The aisles are narrow. Let's just get everyone seated so we can depart on time. Okay. Patricia's eyes narrowed. She wasn't used to being told no, and she certainly wasn't used to a flight attendant taking the side of a hoodie-wearing nobody over a diamond elite member. Are you serious? Patricia scoffed. You're going to let her walk away? She practically attacked me. Ma'am, please sit down, Liam said, his voice firming up. Patricia huffed, smoothing her blazer. She glared at Maya with a venom that made the younger woman flinch. Fine. Go to the back where you belong. Just stay away from me. Maya swallowed hard, nodding once to Liam in thanks, and hurriedly pushed past Patricia to get to the economy section. As she passed, Patricia leaned in her voice, a low, ugly whisper that only Maya could hear. Filthy animal. Maya paused for a fraction of a second. Her jaw tightened. She took a deep breath, clutching her textbook until her knuckles turned white, and kept walking. She wouldn't let this woman ruin today. Today was too important. But Patricia Sterling wasn't done. She sat back down, her heart racing with a mixture of adrenaline and indignation. She felt slighted. She felt disrespected. And Patricia Sterling never let disrespect go unpunished. As the plane finished boarding and the heavy cabin doors were sealed, Patricia ordered another drink. She stewed in her anger, watching the curtain that separated first class from economy. She wasn't going to let this go, not by a long shot. The flight to London was smooth for the first 2 hours. The fasten seatbelt sign was off and the cabin was dim. In economy, Maya had her tray table down. A small reading light illuminated the complex diagrams of the human brain in her textbook. She was highlighting sections on neuroplasticity, mouthing the Latin terms to herself. She was tired, but she couldn't sleep. The encounter with the woman in first class had left a sour taste in her mouth, a residual anxiety that hummed beneath her skin. She had dealt with people like Patricia, before, people who saw her skin color and her clothes and assumed she was nothing. Usually, she could brush it off, but today the stakes felt higher. Maya reached into her backpack and pulled out a small velvet box. She opened it, just a crack peeked inside, and then snapped it shut, tucking it deep into her pocket. Focus, she told herself. Just focus on the work. In first class, the atmosphere was very different. Patricia had consumed 3 glasses of champagne and 2 vodka tonics. The alcohol hadn't sedated her. It had sharpened her rage. She was bored, and her mind kept circling back to the disrespect she had endured. She needed to use the restroom. The first-class lavatory was occupied. The sign said, "Occupied," and she could hear the shower running a perk of the A380 suites. Impatient Patricia looked back. The curtain to economy was slightly open. She knew there was a lavatory just behind the partition, technically in the economy section, but easily accessible. "Why should I wait?" she muttered to herself. Patricia unbuckled her seatbelt and swayed slightly as she stood up. She marched through the curtain, the heavy fabric parting to reveal the cramped rows of economy. The air here felt stale to her warmer. She saw the lavatory door. It was vacant. But as she moved toward it, she stopped. There in the first row of economy seat 34B was the girl. The one in the hoodie. Maya was deep in study, her headphones on, oblivious to Patricia's presence. Her leg was bouncing slightly, a nervous habit. Patricia stood in the aisle, staring down at the top of Maya's head. The alcohol in her system whispered that she should say something. She should remind this girl of her place. Patricia tapped Maya's shoulder. Hard. Maya jumped, tearing her headphones off. She looked up and saw the woman from earlier looming over her. "Yes?" Maya asked, her voice guarded. "You're in my way." Patricia lied. She wasn't blocked. The aisle was wide enough. I'm in my seat," Maya said, confused. "Your leg." Patricia slurred slightly. "It's bouncing. It's shaking the floor. I can feel it all the way in first class." It was a ridiculous accusation. The vibrations of a jet engine far outweighed a tapping foot. "I'm sorry," Maya said, her patience wearing thin. "I'll stop." She put her headphones back on, signaling the end of the conversation. Patricia felt the heat rise in her neck. She dismissed me. Again. Patricia reached out and snatched the headphones off Maya's head. "Hey," Maya cried out, reaching for them. "Give those back." "I am speaking to you," Patricia shouted. Heads in the nearby rows turned. Sleepy passengers blinked their eyes open. "You don't turn your back on your betters. You're drunk," Maya said, her voice trembling but firm. "Please leave me alone." "Drunk," Patricia laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "I am Patricia Sterling. My husband owns half of downtown Chicago. And who are you, some welfare charity case flying on points?" She looked down at the open textbook on Maya's tray. "What is this acting like you can read big words?" Patricia swiped her hand across the tray table. The heavy medical textbook flew off, hitting the floor with a loud thud. The pages crumpled. "Stop it!" Maya unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. She was shorter than Patricia, but she stood her ground. "You need to go back to your seat right now." "Make me," Patricia sneered. Liam, the flight attendant, was rushing down the aisle from the galley, having heard the commotion. "Mrs. Sterling, what is going on? She threatened me." Patricia pointed at Maya, reverting to her earlier tactic. "She stood up and threatened me." "That is a lie," Maya's voice cracked. "She threw my book. She came back here to harass me." Liam stepped between them. "Mrs. Sterling, you need to return to your cabin. Now! This is your final warning." Patricia looked at Liam, then at Maya. She felt cornered. She felt the eyes of the peasants judging her. She saw a young man in row 35, holding up his phone recording. The sight of the camera snapped something inside her. "Put that away," she screamed at the man. Then she turned back to Maya, the source of all this humiliation. "You think this is funny? You think you're smart?" Patricia lunged. It happened so fast, Liam couldn't stop it. Patricia's hand, heavy with diamond rings, swung out in a vicious arc. Crack! The back of her hand connected squarely with Maya's face. The sound was sickening, bone against bone, metal against flesh. Maya's head snapped to the side. She stumbled back, falling into her seat. A gasp rippled through the cabin. For a second, there was total silence. Then Maya looked up. Blood was pouring from her nose. It dripped down her chin, staining her grey hoodie a dark, violent crimson. Her lip was split, swelling rapidly. She brought a hand to her face, pulling it away to see her fingers coated in red. "Oh my God!" a passenger screamed. Patricia stood there, breathing heavily. Her hand hurt. She looked at the blood on Maya's face, and for a fleeting moment fear flickered in her eyes. But she crushed it down. She doubled down. "That's what you get," Patricia spat, her voice shaking with adrenaline. "That's what you get when you don't listen." Maya didn't scream. She didn't fight back. She just sat there, holding her bleeding nose, looking at Patricia with an expression that was no longer fearful. It was something else. It was a cold, terrifying resolve. Liam grabbed Patricia's arm, his grip like iron. "Don't you move. Do not move." He keyed his radio. "Captain, we have a code red in the cabin. Assault. Passenger injured. We need to restrain a passenger." "Get your hands off me!" Patricia struggled, but two other male passengers had jumped up from their seats to help Liam. They grabbed her arms, forcing her down into an empty seat across the aisle. "You can't do this to me!" Patricia shrieked, kicking out. "Do you know who I am? I'll sue this airline. I'll have your jobs, all of you." Maya accepted a towel from a concerned woman in the row behind her. She pressed it to her nose, the white cloth turning red instantly. She watched Patricia thrashing in the grip of the strangers. Maya's eyes were dry. She reached into her pocket and touched the velvet box again. The intercom crackled. The pilot's voice was grim. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Harrison. Please remain seated. We are initiating a diversion." But the flight didn't divert. Not yet. Maya stood up again, swaying slightly. She lowered the bloody towel. "Wait," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried a strange weight that cut through Patricia's screaming. "Liam!" The flight attendant looked at her, his eyes full of pity. "Miss, please sit down. We're getting the first aid kit. We're going to land." "No," Maya said. She reached into her back pocket and pulled out a wallet. She flipped it open. Inside wasn't a standard ID. It was a black badge with a gold emblem, the crest of the Skyline Airways Board of Directors, but with a specific rare insignia in the center. "I need you to use the flight deck phone," Maya said, her voice commanding, shedding the persona of the timid student entirely. "Call the cockpit. Tell Captain Harrison that Director Vance is on board. Tell him to unfreeze the satellite link." Liam froze. He looked at the badge. He looked at Maya, the blood, the hoodie, the youth. Then he looked at the badge again. He recognized it. It was a legendary clearance level, something whispered about in training, but rarely seen. "Director," Liam stammered. "Do it," Maya ordered, "and tell Mrs. Sterling to shut up. She's about to find out exactly who she just hit." Patricia stopped struggling. She looked at the badge. She looked at Maya. The air in the cabin shifted. The drama wasn't over. It had just begun. Liam stared at the badge. The gold insignia of the Skyline Airways Board didn't just catch the light. It seemed to absorb the oxygen in the cabin. He recognized the specific crest in the center, a stylized falcon clutching a globe. It was the sigil of the Global Compliance and Security Oversight Division. This wasn't just a corporate ID. This was go anywhere, question anyone, ground any plane authority. This was the kind of badge that made captains sweat and CEOs apologize. "Director Vance," Liam whispered, the color draining from his face faster than it was draining from Maya's nose. "Make the call, Liam," Maya said. Her voice had completely changed. The softness, the hesitation of the overworked student was gone. It was replaced by a terrifying, icy calm, the tone of someone used to giving orders that altered stock prices. "Now!" Patricia Sterling, still restrained by the 2 male passengers in seat 35, saw the look on Liam's face. It unnerved her more than the sight of Maya's blood. "What is that?" Patricia snapped through her voice wavered. "What are you showing him a fake ID? You people are always running scams." Maya didn't even look at her. She just held the bloody towel to her face with one hand and pointed toward the cockpit with the other. Liam scrambled backward, nearly tripping over himself to get to the interphone by the galley. He unhooked the handset, his hands shaking violently. He punched in the priority code for the flight deck. The cabin was dead silent. The air conditioning hummed a low drone that emphasized the total lack of human noise. 300 people were holding their breath. The passenger in row 35 with the phone was still recording his hand rock, steady now, capturing every second of the shift in power. "Captain Harrison," Liam said into the phone, his voice cracking. "This is Liam in the aft galley. Sir, we have a situation." A gruff voice replied loud enough for the front rows to hear the tinny sound. "Liam, I'm already diverting for the assault. What else is there? Is the passenger secured?" "Sir, the passenger is secured." Liam gulped, looking back at Maya, who was standing in the aisle, blood streaking her chin, looking like an avenging angel in a Gap hoodie. "But the victim?" "Sir, the victim has identified herself. She presented credentials." "Credentials? What are you talking about? Is she a marshal?" "No, Captain. It's a board-level security badge. The Falcon Crest. It's Director Maya Vance." There was silence on the other end of the line. A long, heavy silence that lasted 4 heartbeats. "Repeat that," Captain Harrison said, his tone dropping an octave. It was no longer the voice of a pilot in charge. It was the voice of an employee realizing his ultimate boss was in the room. "Director Maya Vance is on board, seated in 34B. She has been assaulted by a passenger in first class. She is bleeding actively. She is ordering that you unfreeze the satellite link immediately." The sound of a heavy exhale came over the line, then the click of switches. "Understood. Link is active. Tell Director Vance I am stepping out of the cockpit." Liam hung up the phone slowly. He looked at Maya with profound apology in his eyes. "He's coming back, ma'am. Director." Maya nodded once. She lowered the towel, looking at the blood staining the white terrycloth. She then looked slowly around the cabin. This was the moment the flight froze. As Maya's eyes scanned the rows, passengers shrank back. The ones who had ignored her, the ones who had seen Patricia berating her earlier and done nothing, they all suddenly found their shoes very interesting. They realized that the girl they had dismissed as a nobody was perhaps the most powerful person they would ever encounter in close quarters. The illusion of social hierarchy based on seat assignment evaporated instantly. Patricia Sterling in seat 1A was no longer the queen of the plane. She was a suspect, and Maya Vance in 34B was the judge, jury, and executioner. Patricia felt the shift. The 2 men holding her arms loosened their grip slightly, not out of kindness, but out of a sudden, confusing fear of being involved at all. "What's going on?" Patricia demanded, trying to sound authoritative but sounding only shrill. "Who is she? Why is the captain coming back here?" Maya finally turned her eyes to Patricia. There was no anger in them anymore, just a chilling clinical assessment. It was the look a scientist gives a diseased specimen under a microscope. "Liam," Maya said quietly. Does this aircraft carry the polycarbonate flex cuffs in the emergency kit? Yes, Director, Liam said instantly. Get them. Restrain Mrs. Sterling properly. Hands behind her back. She is now a federal prisoner under the jurisdiction of Skyline Airways' internal security protocols until we hit the ground. Prisoner, Patricia shrieked. She tried to lunge up, but the two men, realizing which way the wind was blowing, slammed her back down into the seat, harder this time. You can't do that. I'm Diamond Elite. My husband is Arthur Sterling. I will buy and sell this entire airline. Maya just watched her unimpressed. You can't buy what you already broke, Patricia. The cockpit door up front opened. Captain Harrison, a man with 30 years of flying experience and graying temples, stepped out. He wasn't wearing his casual flight jacket. He had put his full uniform blazer back on, hat tucked under his arm. He walked down the long first-class aisle, past the empty champagne glasses through the curtain, and into the tense silence of economy. He stopped in front of Maya. He took in the blood, the hoodie, the young face. He didn't hesitate. He snapped a sharp, respectful salute. Director Vance, Captain Harrison said, his voice ringing clear in the silent cabin. On behalf of the flight crew and Skyline Airways, I offer my most profound apologies for this failure in passenger safety. I had no idea you were flying with us today. Maya returned the salute loosely. At ease, Captain. I was flying unlisted for a reason. I was studying for my final board exams for my doctorate in neurology, which, thanks to Mrs. Sterling, I am now too concussed to continue. A ripple of gasp went through the cabin. Not only a high-level director, but a neurologist in training. The weight of Patricia's mistake just kept growing heavier. What are your orders, Director? Captain Harrison asked, ignoring Patricia entirely. We divert as planned, Maya said, her voice crisp. Nearest major hub with a Level 1 trauma center and a significant FBI field office presence. Chicago O'Hare should suffice. I want federal agents meeting the jetway. Not local PD, federal. Already coordinating, ma'am, Harrison said. Maya pointed a bloody finger at Patricia. And Captain, authorize Liam to revoke her status instantly. Wipe her account. She's no longer Diamond Elite. As of this moment, she is on the permanent no-fly list for Skyline and all our global partners. Patricia let out a strangled noise that sounded like a dying animal. The no-fly list. It was a social death sentence for someone in her circle. No jetting to Paris for Fashion Week. No weekends in Aspen. You can't, Patricia wailed, tears streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. Arthur will fix this. You don't know who you're dealing with. Maya stepped closer, leaning in, so only Patricia and the recording phone in row 35 could hear. No, Patricia, Maya whispered coldly. You don't know who you were dealing with. You saw a hoodie and skin color, and you decided I was nothing. You decided I was prey. But I'm the one who signs the checks that keep the lights on in the lounges you sit in. I'm the one who approves the security budgets that protect you, and you just assaulted a corporate officer of a multinational conglomerate in international airspace. Maya stood up straight, her voice hardening into steel. Your husband's money can buy real estate, Mrs. Sterling, but it can't buy you out of a federal felony charge for interfering with a flight crew and assaulting a protected person. Maya turned her back on Patricia. Get those cuffs on her, Liam, tightly. The flight to Chicago was the longest 90 minutes of Patricia Sterling's life. She was flex-cuffed, her hands secured tightly behind her back in plastic restraints that dug into her wrists. Liam had moved her to the very last row of the plane, right against the rear galley wall, furthest away from the first-class luxury she felt entitled to. The humiliation was absolute. Every passenger who walked to the rear lavatories had to pass her. They didn't look away anymore. They stared. They whispered. The young man from row 35 had uploaded his video via the plane's Wi-Fi the second Maya authorized the satellite link opened. It was already viral before the wheels even touched the tarmac in Illinois. Asher Skyline, Assault, #Diamond. Elite Monster, Director Vance trending worldwide, up in row 34. Maya sat quietly. Liam had brought her a proper first aid kit. She had cleaned the blood as best she could, packing her nose with gauze. The bleeding had slowed, but the throbbing headache was blinding. She knew the signs of a concussion intimately. She had just been reading about them. Captain Harrison had offered her a seat in first class for the remainder of the flight. Maya had refused. "I'll stay right here," she had said loudly enough for the cabin to hear. "Economy is perfectly fine. It's not the seats that make the passenger, Captain. It's the conduct." Another nail in Patricia's coffin. Maya spent the flight typing on her phone. She wasn't texting friends. She was utilizing the Skyline Executive Secure Messaging app. To Gerald Crofts, CEO, Skyline Global Holdings. From M. Vance Deer, Global Compliance. Subject incident on Flight 402. Immediate action required. Gerald, I'm currently diverting to ORD. I've been assaulted by a passenger. Patricia Sterling, wife of Arthur Sterling. Sterling Real Estate Group. Prepare a press release. We are getting ahead of this. The narrative is ours. Full transparency. Zero tolerance. Also pull the Sterling Group's corporate travel contract files. I want them on my desk by the time I land. She hit send. The wheels of corporate retribution began to turn long before the plane's landing gear deployed. When Flight 402 landed at O'Hare, it didn't taxi to a regular gate. It was directed to a remote tarmac area. The passengers looked out the windows to see a cavalcade of black SUVs with flashing red and blue lights surrounding the aircraft. The FBI. The captain came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chicago. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Federal authorities will be boarding the aircraft shortly to remove a passenger. Once they have departed, we will taxi to the gate. We apologize for the delay and the distressing events of this flight." The cabin doors opened and cold Chicago air rushed in, along with 4 agents wearing FBI windbreakers. They didn't look friendly. They marched straight to the back of the plane. Patricia was sobbing openly now, a mess of snot and tears. The alcohol had worn off, leaving only terror. "Patricia Sterling," the lead agent barked. "My husband is Arthur Sterling." She blubbered weakly, as if the name was a magic spell that had suddenly run out of mana. "Save it for the judge, lady," the agent said. He hauled her up by her cuffed arms, none too gently. As they dragged her down the long aisle toward the front exit, Patricia's eyes locked onto Maya in row 34. Maya was looking at her iPad again, scrolling through medical diagrams, outwardly ignoring the spectacle. But as Patricia passed, Maya looked up. "I hope the cashmere was worth it," Maya said softly. Patricia was hauled off the plane down the mobile stairs and shoved into the back of a federal vehicle. The door slammed shut with a finality that echoed in her soul. Inside the terminal, Arthur Sterling was waiting in the private Admirals Club lounge, sipping scotch, wondering why his wife's flight was delayed. He hadn't checked his phone in an hour. He was annoyed. He hated waiting. His phone buzzed. It was his personal assistant, Sarah. Her voice was shaking. "Mr. Sterling, have you seen the news?" No, Sarah. I'm waiting for Patricia. What is it? Sir, it's Mrs. Sterling. It's everywhere. Twitter, CNN. There's a video. Sir, she hit someone on the plane. Arthur sighed, rubbing his temples. Patricia got into spats. It happened. He'd pay someone off, send a gift basket. All right. Who did she yell at, this time a stewardess? No, sir. She punched a passenger in the face. Drew blood. It's bad on video, Mr. Sterling. She used slurs. Arthur froze. This was worse than usual. Okay, get the legal team on the phone. We'll put out a statement apologizing for her exhaustion. Sir, you don't understand. Sarah was crying now. The person she hit, it wasn't just a passenger. It's Maya Vance. Arthur dropped his scotch glass. It shattered on the polished lounge floor. Vance, Arthur whispered. As in, the Vance Trust. The majority shareholder of the bank that underwrites 90% of my construction loans. Yes, sir. And she's the director of compliance for the airline. Sir, the bank just called. They're freezing our lines of credit pending an ethics review based on the morality clause in our contracts. Arthur stared at the spilled scotch spreading across the floor. His empire was built on debt leverage to the hilt. If the Vance Trust pulled their backing, he was finished. By tomorrow morning, he wouldn't just be husband to a felon. He would be bankrupt. On the plane, the rest of the passengers were finally allowed to deplane. As they passed row 34, many stopped. I'm so sorry that happened to you. The woman who had given her the towel said, touching Maya's shoulder gently. Thank you for handling that, a businessman said, looking ashamed. We should have stepped in sooner. Maya nodded to them, her expression weary. Just remember what you saw today, she told them. Remember that wealth isn't character, and power doesn't always look like a loud woman in a Chanel blazer. She waited until everyone else had left. Liam helped her with her backpack. Are you okay, Director? Liam asked, his voice full of awe and concern. Maya touched her swollen nose and winced. I'll need surgery to reset this, and I have a hell of a headache. She managed a faint, tired smile. But I think I just passed my practical exam on conflict resolution. She walked off the plane and onto the jet bridge. She didn't go to the hospital immediately. She had one more stop to make at the airport. She needed to ensure the karma that had just arrived wasn't just a glancing blow, but a direct hit that would shatter Patricia Sterling's world completely. The holding room at O'Hare's Federal Substation was nothing like the VIP lounges Patricia Sterling was accustomed to. It was a cold, sterile box with cinder block walls painted a depressing shade of institutional grey. There was a metal table, 2 metal chairs bolted to the floor, and a mirror that everyone knew was two-way glass. Patricia sat in one of the chairs, her hands still cuffed behind her back. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by a deep, aching coldness that settled in her bones. Her Chanel blazer was wrinkled, her makeup was smeared, and her wrists burned where the plastic ties bit into her skin. The door buzzed and opened. A man in a sharp navy suit walked in, carrying a leather briefcase. It was her family attorney, Richard Reynolds. He looked like he had run a marathon. His tie was crooked, and he was sweating. Richard. Patricia gasped, relief washing over her. Thank God. Get these things off me. They treated me like an animal. I want to press countercharges. That girl provoked me. It was self-defense. Richard didn't move to help her. He didn't even sit down. He just placed his briefcase on the table and looked at her with an expression Patricia had never seen on his face before. It was a look of defeat. Patricia, stop, Richard said, his voice flat. Stop. Patricia blinked, confused. Richard, I pay you a retainer of $50,000 a year. Do your job. Get the agent in here and get me out. I can't, Richard said. "The FBI isn't releasing you. They're transferring you to the Metropolitan Correctional Center downtown. You're being arraigned tomorrow morning." "Prison!" Patricia shrieked. "For a slap! Don't be ridiculous! It's a misdemeanor!" Richard pulled an iPad from his briefcase and slammed it onto the table. "A misdemeanor. Patricia, look at this." He tapped the screen. It was the video from the plane. The angle was perfect. It showed Patricia looming over Maya. The vile words she whispered, and then the strike clear, brutal, and unprovoked. It showed the blood. It showed Maya's calm reaction. "This has 4 million views in 2 hours," Richard said quietly. "But that's not the problem. The problem is the charge sheet." He began to list them, ticking them off on his fingers. Interference with flight crew members and attendants, that's a federal felony up to 20 years. Assault resulting in serious bodily injury within the special aircraft jurisdiction of the United States, another 10 years. But the nail in the coffin, Patricia, is who you hit. "She's a nobody," Patricia insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. "Some affirmative action hire for the airline. She is the director of global compliance," Richard hissed, leaning in close. "But more importantly, her name is Maya Vance, as in the Vance banking dynasty. Her family's trust fund basically owns the liquidity of half the construction market in Chicago, including Arthur's." Patricia's mouth fell open. The silence in the room was deafening. "Arthur called me," Richard continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The bank just invoked the bad boy clause in his loan agreements. Because of this video, they are calling in his debts. Immediately, all of them." What does that mean?" Patricia stammered. "It means," Richard said, straightening up and buttoning his jacket, "that by tomorrow morning Arthur will likely be filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. You didn't just break a girl's nose, Patricia. You broke your husband's empire." Patricia stared at the wall, her mind reeling. The reality of it was too big to comprehend. She had thought she was untouchable. She had thought the world worked a certain way, that money bought immunity. She hadn't realized that there was always bigger money. And there was always a bigger shark. The door opened again. Special Agent Miller stepped in. "Time to go, Mrs. Sterling," Miller said. "Transport is here." Patricia stood up, her legs shaking so badly she could barely walk. As she was led out into the hallway, handcuffed and broken, she saw a TV screen mounted on the wall. It was tuned to a news channel. The headline on the chyron read, "Skyline Airways Karen arrested victim, revealed as billionaire heiress and neurology prodigy." Patricia closed her eyes as the flashbulbs of the press waiting outside the station began to pop. While Patricia was being processed into the federal prison system, the drama at O'Hare was far from over. Arthur Sterling had refused to leave the airport. He was a man accustomed to fixing things. He fixed zoning boards with bribes, he fixed unions with threats, and he was determined to fix this. He knew Maya Vance was still in the terminal. His sources told him she was in the Skyline Executive Office suite, located behind the check-in counters, giving a statement to the authorities. Arthur stormed toward the double doors of the executive suite. He was a large man, imposing with a flushed face and a suit that cost more than most cars. He pushed past the receptionist. "I want to see her," Arthur bellowed. "Where is she?" 2 security guards stepped forward, but a calm voice cut through the tension. "Let him in." Arthur looked past the guards. Standing by a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the tarmac was Maya. She had changed out of the blood-stained hoodie. She was now wearing a crisp, Skyline-branded polo shirt that someone had found for her. Her nose was bandaged with white tape, and a splint bruising already blooming dark purple under her eyes. She looked small against the backdrop of the massive Boeing 777s outside. But when she turned to face him, Arthur felt a chill run down his spine. She didn't look like a student anymore. She looked like a monolith. Arthur marched up to her, stopping a few feet away. He tried to summon his usual bluster, the intimidation tactic that had worked in boardrooms for 30 years. "You're Maya Vance," Arthur said, his voice a low growl. "And you're Arthur Sterling," Maya replied. Her voice was steady, despite the obvious pain she was in. "You're trespassing in a secure federal access zone, Mr. Sterling. You have 3 minutes before I have you removed." "Listen to me, you little—" Arthur caught himself. He took a breath, switching tactics. He pulled out a checkbook. "Look, my wife she's unwell. She has a drinking problem. We can handle this quietly. I know you come from money, so you don't need cash. But everyone wants something. A donation to your favorite charity. A seat on my board. Name the price to drop the charges." Maya looked at the checkbook, then up at his face. She let out a short, dry laugh. "You think this is a negotiation?" she asked. "Everything is a negotiation," Arthur said, his confidence returning slightly. "I know the Vance Trust is reviewing my loans. If you drop the charges and release a statement saying it was a misunderstanding, I can survive this. If you don't, you destroy a 30-year legacy. Do you really want that on your conscience? Destroying a family over a bloody nose?" Maya walked over to the desk and picked up a thick file folder. She tossed it onto the table between them. It landed with a heavy thud. "Open it," she said. Arthur frowned. He reached out and flipped the folder open. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. His face went pale. These are my internal accounting audits," Arthur whispered, "from the shell company in the Caymans. How did you get these?" "I told you," Maya said, her eyes hard as flint. "I'm the director of compliance. We vet every major partner who holds a corporate contract with Skyline. I've been investigating the Sterling Group for 6 months, Arthur. I was building a case for fraud, money laundering, and bribing aviation safety inspectors to overlook code violations on your hangar projects." Arthur stepped back, clutching the table for support. You were investigating me." "I was?" Maya nodded. "I was flying back from New York today to present this file to the FBI. Your wife's little tantrum just accelerated the timeline, and it gave me the perfect leverage to ensure the public is watching when the hammer drops." Arthur stared at her. He realized now the colossal magnitude of the mistake. His wife hadn't just hit a passenger. She had assaulted the one woman who held the keys to their destruction. "The Vance Trust isn't pulling your loans because of the video, Arthur," Maya said. Stepping closer, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "We're pulling the loans because you're a criminal. The video just makes it so that no one else will ever do business with you again out of pity." "You can't do this," Arthur rasped. "I know people. I know senators." "I know them too," Maya said coolly. "And I know they don't like being associated with men whose wives beat up young black women on airplanes. You're radioactive, Arthur." Maya checked her watch. "Your 3 minutes are up." As if on cue, the doors behind Arthur opened. 2 FBI agents, different ones this time, stepped in. "Arthur Sterling," one agent said. "We have a warrant for your arrest regarding wire fraud and embezzlement based on evidence provided by the Skyline Compliance Division." Arthur looked at the agents, then back at Maya. The fight went out of him. He slumped, looking suddenly old and frail. "Why didn't you say who you were?" Arthur whispered, a final plea to the universe. "Why were you sitting in economy?" Maya touched the bandage on her nose gently. "Because, Arthur," she said, "a true leader sits where the people sit. Maybe if you and your wife had spent less time looking down on everyone, you would have seen the cliff you were walking off." She signaled to the agents. "Take him." Arthur was handcuffed and led away, passing the very glass windows where he used to watch his private jets take off. Now he was just another prisoner in the system. Maya stood alone in the office. The silence returned. She felt the exhaustion crashing down on her. Her head throbbed. She wanted to sleep for a week. But her phone buzzed. It was a notification from YouTube. The video of the incident had hit 10 million views. The comments were flooding in messages of support, of outrage, of justice. She wasn't done yet. She had one final thing to do to close the loop. She had to address the world. The fallout from the Skyline incident didn't just ripple. It crashed like a tsunami. 3 days after the arrest, Maya stood at a podium in the grand atrium of the Skyline Airways headquarters in Chicago. The bruises under her eyes were fading to a sickly yellow, and the splint on her nose was stark white against her dark skin. Dozens of microphones from every major news network were jammed in front of her. She wasn't wearing a hoodie today. She was wearing a tailored black suit, looking every inch the corporate heiress and future doctor she was. "I didn't ask for this attention." Maya began, her voice steady, amplified across the silent hall and into millions of living rooms. "I just wanted to study for my exams. I wanted to get from point A to point B like everyone else. But what happened on Flight 402 is a symptom of a disease we have let fester for too long." She paused, looking directly into the camera lens. Patricia Sterling looked at me and saw nothing. She saw a prop. She saw a target. She forgot that dignity is not determined by the price of your ticket or the color of your skin. She forgot that every person you pass has a story, a struggle, and a power you cannot see. Maya took a breath. Today, Skyline Airways is announcing a new zero-tolerance policy. But more than that, I am announcing that I will be pressing charges to the fullest extent of the law, not for revenge, but to remind people like Patricia and Arthur Sterling that gravity applies to everyone. No matter how high you fly, you can always fall. The trial, 6 months later, was the most watched legal event of the year. Patricia Sterling, the woman who had shrieked about her husband's money, entered the courtroom in a standard-issue orange jumpsuit. Her hair, once dyed a perfect blonde, and blown out weakly, was graying at the roots and pulled back in a messy bun. She looked smaller. Without her jewelry, without her expensive blazers, she looked incredibly ordinary. She wept when the evidence was shown. She wept when the video of her striking Maya was played on a loop for the jury. But the tears didn't move anyone. The jury saw the malice. They saw the entitlement. The judge, a stern woman named Justice Halloway, peered over her glasses at Patricia. "Mrs. Sterling," the judge said, her voice echoing in the wood-paneled room. "You treated a fellow human being as an object. You disrupted the safety of an aircraft. You acted with a level of arrogance that is frankly breathtaking. You believed your status shielded you from consequence. You were wrong." The gavel came down with a sound like a gunshot. "For the charge of interference with flight crew members and assault resulting in serious bodily injury, I sentence you to 36 months in federal prison, followed by 5 years of probation. You are also ordered to pay restitution for Miss Vance's medical bills and emotional distress in the amount of $200,000. Patricia screamed as the marshals took her arms. It wasn't the scream of a queen demanding service anymore. It was the wail of a prisoner realizing her life was over. But the karma didn't stop there. 2 courtrooms away, Arthur Sterling was facing his own reckoning. The files Maya had handed to the FBI, the Vance dossier, had unraveled a Ponzi scheme that had been rotting the core of Chicago's construction industry for a decade. Arthur, stripped of his assets, his reputation and his friends, took a plea deal. He was sentenced to 12 years for wire fraud and embezzlement. The Sterling empire was liquidated. The private jets were sold at auction. The mansions were seized, and Maya. 1 year later, a young woman sat in seat 14A on a commercial flight to London. She was dressed in a simple sweater and jeans. She had a thick book on her lap, Advanced Neurosurgery Protocols. A flight attendant walked by with the drink cart. "Can I get you anything, doctor?" the attendant asked with a smile. Maya looked up. The scar on her nose was faint now, a thin silver line that she wore with pride. She smiled back. "Just water, please, and maybe an extra napkin." She looked out the window as the plane banked over the clouds. She had passed her exams. She was officially Dr. Maya Vance. She had used her settlement money from the Sterlings to start a scholarship fund for underprivileged medical students, specifically those who had to work their way through school, those who were often invisible to the world. She thought about Patricia sitting in a cell somewhere, learning the hard way that kindness costs nothing but cruelty, costs everything. The plane leveled off, soaring smoothly toward the horizon. Maya closed her eyes, finally at peace. She knew who she was. And now, so did the world. This story is a brutal reminder that you never truly know who you are dealing with. Patricia Sterling thought her wealth was a shield, but it turned out to be a paper wall against the force of true integrity. She judged a book by its cover, or in this case a genius by her hoodie, and paid the ultimate price. It proves that in the age of cameras and accountability, karma is always watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. What would you have done if you were sitting in seat 34B? Would you have kept your cool like Maya? Or would you have fought back sooner? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story about the arrogant getting exactly what they deserve. Thanks for watching, and stay humble.